Sebastian Fundora fought Timothy Zhu, right? Tim Zhu. He fought him out there last March. Got his nose broken or his nose busted, won the decision fight. It was a bloody, magnificent mess to watch. In that fight, Sebastian Fundora won both the WBO strap that Tim Zhu had won by beating Brian Bala Mendoza. The one that Tim Zhu was the interim champion for up until he fought Brian Bala Mendoza. Jermell Charlo dropped that WBO strap in his pursuit of Canelo Alvarez in the big payday. Either way, Tim Zhu at the WBO. Sebastian Fundora won that WBO by beating Tim Zhu. At the same time, they decided the vacant WBC strap was up for grabs. Sebastian Fundora won that fight and got that strap as well, making Sebastian Fundora the unified WBC and WBO champion. Then, of course, Terence Crawford had that recent fight with Israel Madrimov, in which he won the WBA 154-pound strap.
Hey, hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, family? It's your boy Hot Boxing Minute. You already know what time it is. It's time for the real, the only way I'm going to give it to you. Before we begin any of this, y'all, hit that like button, press follow if you haven't already done so. And you know what? Let's talk about some boxing, right? Right? Second-hand round of applause. Your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, Hot Boxing Minute. The big topic of the day was the news that got released by Barbosa Box, ESPN knockout reporter and boxing journalist. He basically said, and I quote, let me pull up his tweet here on what he said. Errol Spence Jr. versus Sebastian Fundora. This is supposed to go down at Cowboy Stadium or the Cowboy training facility out there in Arlington, Texas at the end of January 2025. So I guess a bunch of different things are in play here. We already saw Sebastian Fundora had that magnificent fight against Tim Zhu in last March. So Errol Spence Jr. versus Sebastian Fundora. The rumor is they're going to fight in January, just so that you guys, just in case you guys missed it. So Sebastian Fundora fought Timothy Zhu, right? Tim Zhu. He fought him out there last March. Got his nose broken or his nose busted, won the decision fight. It was a bloody, magnificent mess to watch. In that fight, Sebastian Fundora won both the WBO strap that Tim Zhu had won by beating Brian Bala Mendoza. The one that Tim Zhu was the interim champion for up until he fought Brian Bala Mendoza. Jermell Charlo dropped that WBO strap in his pursuit of Canelo Alvarez in the big payday. Either way, Tim Zhu at the WBO. Sebastian Fundora won that WBO by beating Tim Zhu. At the same time, they decided the vacant WBC strap was up for grabs. Sebastian Fundora won that fight and got that strap as well, making Sebastian Fundora the unified WBC and WBO champion. Then, of course, Terence Crawford had that recent fight with Israel Madrimov, in which he won the WBA 154-pound strap. Now, here's what makes it interesting, though, is the WBC mandated that fight between Israel Madrimov and Terence Crawford was a WBC title eliminator for the strap that Sebastian Fundora has. And at the end of August, the WBO ordered that Terence Crawford get that shot at Sebastian Fundora's strap. So it all is kind of a weird, like, what is going on? What is really going on? So in effect, Sebastian Fundora has two straps. The WBC and the WBO have both ordered that he's supposed to make a mandatory defense against Terence Crawford. And in the past, in past interviews, for those of you who have been following the culture, Sebastian Fundora said he is more interested in fighting Errol Spence Jr. because obviously I think Errol Spence might provide more of a financial upside, which is kind of odd. Where does Errol Spence Jr. fit in today's boxing landscape? Well, you know, he had that monumental beatdown at the hands of Terence Bud Crawford at the end of 2023. Hold on, let me put up the do we got the funeral sound here? Check it out. Here's what happened to the big train of publicity that was Errol Spence Jr. after he ran into Terence Bud Crawford. Oh yeah. There you go. There you go. 21 gun salute for Big Fish Errol Spence Jr. because he was seen as like the big force of nature at 147 pounds. He had, you know, beat Danny Garcia. He had beaten various other dudes in that division to become the unified champion. And then he got steamrolled by Terence Bud Crawford in that magnificent fight that pretty much defined one of the most awesome years of boxing that we've had in years, thus making Terence Bud Crawford a two-division undisputed world welterweight champion at 147 pounds. Errol Spence was in a car crash. He flipped the Ferrari. Then he got into a car crash during the build-up to the Terence Bud Crawford fight. Then he got into the car crash that was Terence Bud Crawford. So now here we are at this interesting juncture, at this interesting news dropped by Barbosa Boxing. He says that Sebastian Fundora is going to make a fight against Errol Spence Jr. Now, I'm not really sure what the logic is behind this. Like, if we pull this up, Sebastian Fundora, as we all know, is 6'6", and he has an 80-inch reach. What is Errol Spence? He's got to be about a 5'10", if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull up Errol Spence's physical dimensions. So obviously, Sebastian Fundora's height is obviously going to be a big problem. Let's see. Oh yeah, Errol Spence is 5'9" with a 72-inch reach. So Errol Spence is giving up, obviously, like, what is that? 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of height and 8 inches of reach against Sebastian Fundora. We have not seen Errol Spence since that magnificent loss at the hands of Terence Bud Crawford. When was that? That was July of 2023. So coming into January of 2025, that will be close to 2 years that Errol Spence has not seen any activity. In addition to the fact that he is no longer with Derek James. They're in the middle of litigation because apparently he owes Derek James some kind of back-end money off some of the pay-per-views from all those crazy pay-per-views that Errol Spence Jr. sold. Is Errol Spence Jr. still a commodity in the state of Texas? Does Errol Spence Jr. have the skill set to beat someone like the towering Inferno Sebastian Fundora? I don't really know. That's a lot of questions that are going to be answered. Is this fight even for real? It's, I don't know, but it's a big rumor. There have been talks about this fight between Errol Spence and Sebastian Fundora ever since Sebastian Fundora beat, Tim Tszyu, much to everyone's kind of chagrin, because rightfully Terence Crawford should be getting this fight. And as we know, the PBC and Terence Crawford have this long history of PBC essentially holding the carrot stick in front of Terence Crawford but not giving him a shot at fighting for the belts. So obviously, if Errol Spence Jr. and Sebastian Fundora are on the same side of the promotional aisle, it's going to be easier and less people, less hands in the pot for PBC to go the route of putting on an event involving a headline that involves Errol Spence Jr. and Sebastian Fundora. And oddly enough, I think Errol Spence Jr. would be the promotional A side going into that fight, despite the fact that he is not the champion. Because as much as Sebastian Fundora is an amazing wonder to watch inside that ring, he isn't exactly a commercial hit. He doesn't really sell out arenas. He has never sold a pay-per-view, unlike Errol Spence Jr., who, packed Dallas Cowboys Stadium and whooped up on Mikey Garcia on pay-per-view. So this will likely be a pay-per-view event for PBC, I believe. PBC so far this year in 2024 has only had 2 pay-per-view events, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe they have a tank fight coming up at the end of this year. That'll be their 3rd. Or was it only 1? I don't know. It escapes me. But that's the latest news coming down the pipeline. I don't think Errol Spence, coming off that hellacious whooping he had at the hands of Terence Crawford, should go straight into a fight against Sebastian Fundora. Like, I think that is such a bad decision. I think Errol Spence should get at least one warm-up fight at 154 pounds. At least get some confidence under you before you head straight into another fight without any kind of like warm-up or anything. We just seen what happened with Danny Dubois. Danny Dubois got beat by Alexander Usyk, won back-to-back fights, built his confidence up, went into that fight with AJ, and now he is the face of UK boxing. But he took those fights after Alexander Usyk to build his confidence. So we even saw with AJ's case, he had got beat twice back-to-back by Alexander Usyk, and he won like 3 or 4 consecutive fights before going into that fight with Danny Dubois. And him getting blown out by Danny Dubois is a whole different issue entirely. But in the past, if you would lose, and you would lose in that dramatic of fashion, you would at least get a warm-up or 2 to get some confidence under you before hopping right back into the ring. But if Errol Spence thinks he can do it, I don't know. To me, it seems like it might be a cash out. I don't see Errol Spence, now that people know the way to go around trying to beat him. Now, true, Sebastian Fundora is no Terence Bud Crawford. He's not a switch hitter. He doesn't have the most craziest footwork and the ability to use angles the way Terence Crawford does, but Sebastian Fundora does have a long jab. He is a competent boxer. He is a puncher. We all saw, what he's done in his past performances. And, there was obviously that infamous fight where he kind of busted up, what's his name? Erickson Lubin, and Erickson Lubin at one time was one of the most highly touted amateur fighters in the country. He hasn't quite had the luck that he should have at a pro level, but he's kind of built his name back up and strung off some good wins himself. But I do believe that at this juncture in Errol Spence's career, it might be too much. Boxing community, do you think that Errol Spence is tripping, coming off of that car crash and that accident, to hop right back into a fight with that man, Sebastian Fundora? Let me know in the comment section what you think about that. I think it's a bad decision. So if that fight does go down in January, they're probably going to stack the card with all kind of undercard fights. What happens if whoever wins? If Sebastian Fundora wins, you've probably got a unification fight between him and Terence Crawford. Or if Errol Spence wins, we have that rematch with Terence Crawford at 154 pounds. Also, don't forget that Bakram Murtazayev and Tim Tszyu also have their match scheduled coming up. I think the date might be on here. Oh, it isn't listed here in what I'm looking up, but Murtazayev and Tim Tszyu are going to be fighting for that, what's that, WBA, IBF, for the IBF strap. So that's also going to be a possible opponent for Terence Crawford if he decides he just doesn't even want to deal with the mess that is the WBO and the WBC and Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence. Welcome to the boxing game, folks. You got 4 sanctioning bodies. You got different promotional companies, different hands in the pot, and it's just the big news that hit the wire today. Anyways, let me know, folks, what you think about that prospective matchup between Errol Spence and Sebastian Fundora. Do you like the idea? Do you think Errol Spence is out of his mind? Whoever wins that fight, what would be next for them? I want to know your input on that. Let me know in the comment section. Hit like if you haven't already done so. This won't be the longest video. I just wanted to address what was going on with that latest rumor by Barbosa Box about Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence versus Sebastian Fundora. Anyways, y'all, until the next time, you already know what time it is. This is Hot Boxing Minute. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.